working this morning. The printer needed to be working better, so I'll try to talk loud. My wife is sitting in the back over there, so she'll just give me the wave if I'm not getting loud enough. But I'm pretty soft-spoken, so I'll do my best to project, and hopefully God will do the rest, as they say. So every time I get up here, I feel a lot like Moses, at the burning bush when God said, he wanted him to be his spokesperson for the Israelites. I kind of like, me? You want me to get up in front of people and talk? So believe me, I'm way more nervous than you are. So we'll get through it together. But anyway, thanks for having me here today. Really appreciate it. Thanks for the warm welcome you gave my wife and I. And it's great to be out here and see familiar faces. It's always a blessing to have the opportunity to be in front of the church, in front of the congregation, and just share a little bit about what's going on with servants. So I just want to share a little bit about our history and a little bit about where we're heading, and especially focusing in on the local ministry that we do. So actually in 3 days, you were talking about how long servants has been around. In 3 days, it'll be our 21st anniversary. So May 22nd is our anniversary. So we were started about 24 years ago. After I went on a mission trip to Guatemala, I really felt God calling me to come back to the area and to really start an organization that would connect people in need with people who wanted to serve. And that's where we came up with the name Servants, because we wanted to be servants in the community. And I'll talk more about that in a little bit here. But over the course of those 24 years, we've led about 100 mission trips internationally to Guatemala, India, Uganda, Haiti, Dominican Republic. We've been around a lot of different locations. And we've also done about 100 different disaster trips here in the United States, mostly the Gulf Coast, Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, and then up North Carolina, New Jersey, and places like that. So we've done a lot of international and a lot of disaster trips. But back in 2007, we started our Home Helps ministry, which is the local ministry that we do, where we do home repair. And that's really what I want to focus on today. And so in the next couple of weeks, not sure exactly which project it'll be, but in the next couple of weeks, we're going to celebrate working on our 1,500th home. And so most of that was in York County. Almost 1,400 of those were in York County. The rest are in Lancaster and Adams County, where we've recently started serving as well. So we serve in those three areas. So 1,500 homes we've worked on, and later this year we're going to record our 150,000th volunteer hour locally. So that's just in this area we've worked 150,000 volunteer hours. Next year we're going to hit 250,000 total volunteer hours, international, disaster, and home helps combined. But it's really a celebration of what this local community does and what they pour back into the community. So when we first started Home Helps, we were really just, like I said, we were trying to match volunteers with people that wanted to serve, with homeowners that were in need, and we didn't have much of a purpose to that, or much of a reasoning behind that, other than we just knew there was people that needed home repairs, and we had a lot of people that were experienced with international trips and disaster trips who could do home repairs. And we said, there's need in our own backyard. And so we had one homeowner call us that needed help, and so we started working on her house. And then we had another homeowner call a couple months later, and we started working on her house. So in the first year, we worked on 2 houses. And then, as more and more people saw us out working in the community, and the word started to spread in churches and in the senior centers, we started getting more and more calls. And we work on homes for older adults, people with disabilities, families that are in need. But what we started seeing more and more was older adults that were calling us, people living on a fixed income that couldn't afford to do the repairs. And so what we started seeing, like I said, was more and more calls. And so that age group, I'll say 65 and over, right now the 65 and over age group is the fastest growing group of people who experience homelessness for the first time. And so there's more and more people over the age 65 experiencing homelessness than ever before, and more so than any other age group. And so that's something that we're really seeing is a need of affordable housing, and especially for older adults. I was reading some articles the other day about affordable housing, And a lot of times when you talk about affordable housing, the first thing people think of is, oh, we need to build more houses. We need to build more apartments that are affordable for people to live in. And so I was reading this article about some local projects, York and Lancaster County, where they're building these affordable housing complexes. But most of these are in the city, so in York City and Lancaster City, they're downtown. But most of the population of our counties are in the outskirts out here where we're at today. And these projects, they're adding maybe 150 to 200 new affordable housing units, but the cost is $50 to $80 million a piece. So, they're building these buildings for $80 million or $50 million, but it's only adding about 150 new affordable houses. Well, our population is aging way faster than 150. Even if they were able to do one a year, which they're not, it's just not enough. There's not enough new affordable housing available. And what it forgets and what it leaves behind is all the housing units that are currently existing that are falling into disrepair. And so one of the things that we say a lot, and is something that's common in the industry, is the most affordable home is the one you're already living in. So you're already living there, you either own it or you're renting it, but you've got equity in it. It's the most affordable home if you can keep it maintained. And so our goal is really to try to reach out to these homeowners and help them stay where they're at and do it in a much more affordable way. So we focus on keeping the existing homes available to people to live in. And for us, an average home repair costs about $5,000 to $8,000. So when you compare that to a $50 million building that's about $300,000 per unit, we're able to keep, do the math on that real quick, about 60 homes repaired for the cost of one new unit available. And so it's a much more cost-effective way to help people, and it's really helping people in need. One of the homeowners that we're serving right now actually is just down the road here, a couple of miles towards Brogue. The homeowner, their home was condemned, so they had to move out. They were living in the backyard in a tent for the past year, and they finally heard about us through one of the local churches, and we were able to go back in there. We partner with the Planning Commission in York, and we're working on rebuilding that home. And they're just about to the place. I think they might have already moved back in, even though we're still doing some work. And but they're now, out of their tent. They're back in their home, and soon it'll be finished for them, and they'll be back. And so that's one. It's kind of like the old story. The starfish on the beach. You're throwing one in at a time, but that's one. One affordable home that we were able to repair, and so we're excited about that. But it's also about helping older adults age in place, and so 85% of people, as they get older, want to stay in the home they're already in, as opposed to moving into assisted living or moving in with a friend or a relative. Most people want to stay in the home they're already in, but they want to be able to do that safely and affordably. And so that's kind of where Servants comes into play in that regard. So most of our homeowners are living on about $24,000 a year or less. So about $2,000 a month of fixed income. Most of our homeowners are on Social Security, and that's not growing as fast as inflation. So as the cost of construction materials and contractors has been increasing, we get more and more phone calls because people can't afford the materials to do the repairs. A lot of times they're not able to do the repairs. They don't have the skill to do the repair, and they're not able to hire somebody to do that work for them. And so our volunteers and staff really help these homeowners to make their homes more safe and make them more accessible. As we age, our mobility changes. We shared a lot this morning about different people in our congregation and families of people here who've fallen recently. And so it reminds me of a homeowner that we're working on right now in Hanover. Actually, we just completed this project. But this homeowner in Hanover, his name was Andy. And Andy's 72 years old, and he lives with his wife and his father-in-law. So his father-in-law is 90, but they're a nice little family unit. They live together in their home that they've had. And Andy is a retired maintenance worker. He worked in a church over in Lancaster for 20 years until he just recently retired. And Andy is a tinkerer, so I don't know if I might have invented that word, but I like it. So Andy likes to tinker in the garage. He likes to take old lawnmowers that other people have given up on, can't be fixed, and he collects those, and then he, works on those, gets them running again, and then he'll sell them and take that money and use it to buy parts to work on the next lawnmower. Andy also has a 54 Ford pickup truck that he's been restoring for the past 20 years, and he's about this close to getting it on the road. He's like this close. So, like I said, Andy is 72. He's been very mobile. His wife and father-in-law are very mobile, and they like to get out of the house and do things. Andy likes to tinker in the garage. But Andy recently had, in the last 6 months, he's had about 5 mini strokes. So that's just made him a little bit unstable, with his walking. And the exit from his house is just a little bit higher than this stage. It's about 4 or 5 steps. It's not a lot of steps, but just 4 or 5 steps, for him to get off his front porch onto his driveway. And that's how he gets out to his car, to go places, gets out to his garage to work on his lawnmowers. And recently Andy tripped and going down the steps fell, and he broke several ribs. So he was in the hospital. They discharged him. He came home. And then it wasn't long after that, his father-in-law fell down the steps, and he broke his eye socket. And so now, Andy and his father-in-law, what used to be just a short set of 4 or 5 steps, that's now become a hazard to them. That's something they're now, they're a little bit more afraid to go down the steps. They're a little bit more hesitant to go outside to do the things that they like to do. And they become sort of prisoners in their own home. Now they don't have a way to get out. They're kind of fearful of making the attempt. And so, that's kind of where servants came along. So they heard about servants, and they called us up, and we went out and did an assessment. Got to meet Andy and his wife and father-in-law. They're great people. And, we were able to pretty quickly build them a wheelchair ramp. So we built them a ramp. Now, 4 or 5 steps up is about, anywhere from 40 to 48 inches. For every inch, you got to go a foot. So we built them about a 50-foot ramp that takes them out of their house and over to the driveway. And now they can just really easily walk down the ramp, get to their driveway, get to the garage. So Andy's back in business, fixing his lawnmowers and things like that. But that's a very common homeowner that we serve. The 1,500 homeowners we've served, it's a lot about accessibility, a lot about that isolation that occurs when you feel like you're trapped in your own home. You can't manage the steps, or maybe it's the shower, the bathroom that has some accessibility. And so, our role in that helping people age in place is really about making it safe. Because, if you're safe in your home, that's where you're most comfortable being. You don't want to have to move out and go somewhere else. But I think, the most important thing that we've learned, really, you kind of got a glimpse of it in those 2 stories, is that the homeowners that we serve, they're living very difficult lives. Their income is low, or their income is fixed, and they're not able to keep up with their homes the way the prices and everything are rising. And so, many of them suffer, like I said, from isolation. They're suffering from frequent falls, life-threatening falls. And it reminds me of another story. I'll make this one quick. There was a homeowner we just worked on over in Lancaster County, and this was in a trailer, and it was a younger family. His name is Alex, and he has 3 kids living with him. And he had a hole in every room of the house. So there was a hole that went down to the ground in every room in his house. And in the bathroom, there was literally no floor. So it was just the joists. So whenever you had to use the bathroom, you had to kind of walk joist to joist to get over. And we see this a lot, especially in manufactured homes, where the flooring deteriorates over time. Most manufactured homes aren't designed to live in for 50 years. They're really a 20-year lifespan. And there's 3,500 manufactured homes in York County alone. So just imagine, and I think, if I remember, I should have looked at this before, but I think only about 500 of those were built after 2000. The rest of those were built before 2000. Many of them were built back in the 60s and 70s. And so a lot of them fall into disrepair. And so this gentleman and his kids were living in a trailer where there was a hole literally in every floor. the volunteers, when they went out to work on the bathroom, were standing between the joists on the ground. So their feet are on the ground, they're standing between the joists as they start to rebuild this home. And now Alex has, his home is all fixed up, his floors are all there. He's back, having a safe home for his kids. And so that's the kind of thing we see this all the time. And so what happens, when you're living in conditions like that, you have holes in your floor, or you can't go down the front steps because you're afraid of falling. You just start to lose hope. You lose hope, in your family. You lose hope in your community. You start to lose hope in God, and that's unfortunately what we see a lot, is that people, the church has let them down, or their community has let them down. They just don't know where to turn anymore, and they just have this hopelessness that we come across. And so, like I said, that's the most important thing we really want to focus on. It's not so much about the repair, but about that homeowner. So, it's really because, though, that we have supporters, churches like yourselves that support us. We have individuals and families that support us, but it's because of them, and it's really because those volunteers that serve 150,000 hours. That number even shocks me. There's about 3,200 people made up that 150,000 hours. So those 3,200 volunteers that have served locally, they see the transformation every single day. John Burke, he's one of our big volunteers, gets out almost every week and works during the work camps every summer. He can attest to a lot of the transformation he's seen in people's lives, and that's the difference. That's what we're trying to do. And so the change that we see in people from the time we first meet them, the time we go out and do an assessment, until the time we finish a project, is amazing. The changes in their faces, the change in their countenance, they go from that hopelessness to actually having hope. They have joy. They have a big smile on their face. A lot of times, homeowners, they don't want the volunteers to leave. They'll call us and tell us, like, we made such a great friendship with the volunteers. It's hard to see them go. They'll call us up in tears, saying, how much they appreciate the work, but how much they really appreciated the servants that were there serving. And so that's where the transformation comes from, and it comes from that touch. We pray with our homeowners. So volunteers circle up. We hold hands with the homeowner. We pray with them. A lot of times, homeowners tell us this is the first time anybody's ever prayed with them. And so having that opportunity, being a faith-based organization, being an organization that's focused on Christ, we're not just going in and building ramps and doing things, real fast and getting out of the home. We're there to build relationships, when we're there to help transform lives. And, it's not about what we did. It's about who we are. It's not that we were there to serve people, but it was that we were servants. And so if we look at today's reading again, if we look at Philippians, Paul tells us, Jesus Christ, who though he was in the form of God, did not count equality with God a thing to be grasped, but he emptied himself by taking on the form of a servant. So the way I really love how Paul uses that word, Christ became a servant. It wasn't that Christ served, but he took on the form of a servant. It's a noun, it's not a verb. He took on that identity. Anybody can serve, for a period of time and fake it. Anybody here had a waiter or waitress that served them in a restaurant, and you could tell they were faking it? They didn't really want to be there to serve you. I think about the story as I was writing this. I was thinking about the old joke, about the bacon and egg breakfast. The chicken is involved in the process, but the pig is committed. Think about that for a minute. The chicken's just donating, but the pig is giving everything he's got to make that breakfast happen. So the chicken is involved, the pig is committed. And so you have to really commit to be a servant. Christ had to commit. He came, the Son of God, came to earth in his humanity to be a servant. That takes a huge amount of commitment. And it's like it's an identity. You take on the identity of a servant. So, Many of us in the room, we're either a husband or we're a wife. That becomes our identity. When you have children, you become a mother or a father. You're always a mother or a father. Everybody in here is either a son or a daughter. That becomes your identity. That's nothing, you can't change that. That's who you are. And that's the way Christ came as a servant. He was a servant. So like I said, anybody can build a ramp. We can hire contractors. We could collect money and hire contractors to do all this work. But there's no transformation that happens in that process. It's about being a servant. It's about how we serve Christ, and this is the mission of servants. It's about serving Christ. It's about building relationships. It's about transforming lives and providing hope. And by being a servant, we can do that. If we're just serving, or if we're just paying somebody, those other things, they don't happen. And so, with servants, we see a homeowner locally that's moving out of their tent back into their home. Without servants, they're living in their backyard. Without servants, Andy and his family, they probably would get broken up. So Andy and his wife, they might, if they're lucky, they might end up together, living together somewhere, but their father-in-law wouldn't be able to live with them, in public housing or something. He'd have to move away. So they lose their family, unit. Andy can't work on his mowers anymore. All those things that they enjoy in their life would go away. But because of servants and the volunteers of servants, they're able to stay together and live in their home. So, in closing, just want to share a couple of things. Without servants, like I said, 1,500 homeowners in York County and surrounding counties wouldn't have had their homes repaired in the last 10, 17 years. But with servants, they've had that transformation. They've had those homes repaired. So we have a program at Servants, and I know the Springvale really supports Servants a lot. We're always looking forward to Bill coming every month and dropping off the coin jar, and that goes a long way. Every little bit helps us do what we do. But we have a new program that we call Foundation Builders at Servants, and what we're really trying to do is look at what is the foundation of servants. The foundation of servants is prayer, and it's our volunteers. And so Foundation Builders are helping us by supporting us every month with prayer and with financial support. And so you can go on our website, and it's really easy. A pop-up will come up and prompt you to sign up. But you can sign up by praying for us, or you can sign up by giving us a donation every month. So that's one thing. But my main challenge to you today is really to be a servant. That's what I would like you all to take away from this. So taking on that form of a servant, really, kind of like I did 25 years ago, 24 years ago, I prayed out to God, what do you want me to do? What do you want me to serve? I felt this calling on my life, to do something different. And so, what God's vision to me was to form an organization like Servants to help people get engaged in mission projects. And so I would challenge you today to do that same thing. Ask God, where's God calling you to be a servant? So we're all called to be servants in our families and serve each other, but also, maybe it's in your neighborhood. Maybe it's serving somebody in your neighborhood that you haven't talked to in a while that might be struggling with some of those issues we talked today with isolation. Maybe they don't have family or friends to talk to. So maybe that's where you could be a servant. Bill was talking today about the two gentlemen here at the church who were servants here right at church, helping make things keep going. One thing we didn't have here today was a pastor. He might be here. I don't know if he's here or not, but he didn't speak today. But there was a lot of servants that were here that shared the children's message, sang for us, read scripture. That's another great way to be a servant. And guess what? Servants always needs more servants. So we will also be happy to take on your volunteer hours. So wherever God's calling you today to be a servant, I just ask that you would go with the example of Christ, because it's the example that Christ gave us in Philippians, where he became a servant. He came to serve God. He came to build relationships. We see Christ over and over again building relationships with the people that he interacted with. And he also undoubtedly transformed lives, and we can see that throughout the Bible of how Christ transformed people. And he's transforming people today, as we, all of us sitting here today, transformed by Christ. And lastly, he also provides hope. So he calls us to do the same thing. And so that would be my hope for you today, is that you would find purpose as a servant. And thank you again for having me. Amen.
Thank you, Trent. Thank you for sharing those stories and uplifting words.